welcome to the next edition of Serverless Craic. How are we getting on?
You good?
Hey, all good, all good. Just enjoying the nice weather. Nice weather, too hot. Yep. Um, Good stuff, good stuff. Right, so we're going through the book, which in our AI infected landscape seems still seems to be relevant, which is
Yes.
good fun. We're on chapter 13, the Serverless First Age, which is part of phase three, next best action. So we did the first half of this last time. I think we got as far as serverless myths.
Yeah.
We're kind of saying, I mean, it's really like modern cloud myths.
Yeah.
So when did we write this? About what, 3, 4 years ago?
Yeah, 2021, 2022 sort of time frame when they started to put it together for
Yeah,
this.
it was 2021, 2022. So maybe it might be worth going through these and thinking like we'll chat about it, think then is it still relevant as it was? Or is it more relevant or maybe less relevant? I'd like to think in the last 3 or 4 years someone would have been dispelled, but you never know.
Yeah.
Right. So the first couple are engineering. So first one is serverless has a cold start problem. We can't afford slow performance in our system.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe I'm not sure in the last chapter, David, we covered there's an interesting section just before the myths, and it's the serverless is not the point
Yeah.
section,
Yeah,
right? And again, I know we talk about serverless and again, people try and put serverless in a box, and we've covered this in lots of the podcasts. Like people think you're talking about a Lambda function, but really what we're, I think the point that kind of goes through at the end there is really we can talk about like functions are not the point, managed services are not the point, no ops are not the point,
mm,
cost is not the point, code is not the point. It goes through all those kind of those statements, and it gets to the end. Serverless is a consequence of focusing on business value. So
yes,
you tend to get a lot of resistance in organizations, to that, getting to that point where you are focusing on that, right? And then I think that's really where we'll hit a lot of these myths. And at every company you go into, I kind of feel like these myths are relevant, right?
that's true.
Um,
Yeah. No, the complete and it's extremely misunderstood. Um, the cold start one's a big one, like, and I mean, and the thinking behind that, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, like, is if you're standing up your own machine or your own container,
yeah,
you can keep it warm and you can have very fast performance, but the amount of effort it takes to stand that up
yeah,
is fairly significant versus just dropping your code in the Lambda, which is infrastructure is taken care of. So there's much less operational overhead. Um, but
yeah.
this is a funny myth because I would say cold starts are a mostly solved problem. But the problem is most people don't know what the solution is. So it is still a problem, I think.
Yeah, I think it's an easy one. It's an easy one if you're particularly if the org's new to it, and then you hear, um, I think, when you think, for example, you get a team coming in and the team isn't really familiar with how to maybe deploy or package a particular service. So they'll run into, they will encounter a cold start, and they'll have to consider what to do in that scenario. But there's lots of ways to mitigate it, and there are kind of ways. If anything, it helps you think about good practice, like, so you are only shipping the stuff you're using, everything's fairly lean. You are thinking about like your latency and your performance, so it does drive good behavior anyway. And then you would argue that these things they've been reducing over time, right? So even when you think about when we started looking at these functions, what, 8, 9, 10 years ago, they've done nothing but get quicker,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
they've significantly reduced the perceived and the actual cold start performance hits. And I think over the last year or two, they even start almost predicting when you're going to use it so that they would warm it up behind the scenes for you so that you would never really experience cold starts without
Yeah,
even having to have the initial warm up period. So yeah, I think it's a lot of this is understanding your value chain, understanding the components of your architecture, understanding where really, really fast performance is an actual concern, and then making sure that you have the appropriate pattern and technologies to mitigate that need for speed and that particular point.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
just as I look at the end of that one, it actually says cold starts or solve problems. So I've just repeated exactly what was written in the book. Um, but you're right. I mean, it's like if you don't understand the technology you're using, like you're going to run into silly mistakes. No different than anything else. If you don't properly understand the thing you're using, you're going to it's not going to be tuned. Same for the car. If you don't understand the car, you're not going to have it well tuned.
Like
You know?
it's back to the serverless first mindset and approach, right? If it truly does cause you significant impact to have a Lambda function, for example, in your stack because it, you know, for particular performance characteristics or whatever, then you fall back to something else. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, this is the thing as well. Again, it's probably a myth, but then again, it does force that question. Remember there was maybe about 5, 6, Dave, was probably 8 years ago. Remember the whole RX thing, the reactive
That's
low
right.
latency stuff. If you are working where you're literally looking at your proximity to the source of that request and you're factoring latency into that, that's a real specific approach to certain things. And maybe you do have to do something fairly custom or whatever, but for the majority of use cases, like in terms of my experience, this is easy. This is a solved
Yes.
problem.
Do you
So
think it's what I think? Do you think the myth stands up? Do you think it's gone away, or I think it's got worse?
I think it's still a myth. I think that some of
Still a myth.
the myth's still out there.
I think so, yeah. Still out there. Right. Second one. This is a good one. Serverless is impossible to test since you can't run it locally. I
yeah, but
must
this
say
is
local stack has helped that.
Yeah,
Local stack is quite cool.
there's
yeah,
quite a few of those. There's the evolution of the testing pyramid to be testing more in the cloud. That sort of maturity of what should you actually test and where should you test it. I think that there's been a lot of good maturity in some of those patterns around what the actual testing pyramid should look like in a cloud-based application. Don't try to test the cloud, right? Make sure you're actually testing in the cloud, and things like IAM permissions and other things were always the thing that would catch you out if you, hey, I've mocked everything out and everything runs locally fine, right? So
mm,
I think there's been lots of good patterns, guidance, advice, probably books written on, and I know AWS provide a lot of good on the serverless land, so testing sort of guidance around how to test a serverless ecosystem and serverless solution properly. So I think
Mm.
this one has definitely improved a lot. And I think even with I think it was last month or the last couple of weeks, the going from your console to your IDE directly, and then the live debugging and that sort of functionality has
Yeah.
removed a lot of the friction from testing of serverless and Lambda based solutions. So I
yeah.
think this one has gone away if you apply the right techniques, patterns, processes.
I think you
Yeah.
hit the nail on the head. It's if you try and approach it with like your old traditional MVC style testing approaches, you are going to hit challenges. But you kind of just it's just different. I think there's some nice guidance in uh some yeah what do you call him, Yan Chui, the Burning Monk.
Yeah.
He talks
Mm.
about like the whole remote call stuff. You mentioned it there. Testing in the cloud and not being afraid to do it. Like so you can spin up a stack, test it in isolation, check it, tear it down, and then kind of proceed, ship your asset along. So there's tons of really good, nice, robust,
Yeah.
very capable testing approaches
Yeah.
in this space.
Ephemeral environments. And I know at Serverless
Ephemeral.
Edge
Yeah.
Belfast we had Connor Tier talking about testing in the cloud and having an ephemeral testing environment to really rapidly get
Mm.
that feedback and test it properly. So I do think this one is definitely it's a myth that it's impossible to test. I think that's been a solved problem for a while.
It's a solved problem. Yeah. No, I'd agree. And that Connor Tiers talk is up in serverlessdaysbelfast.com. It's up in the talk super if you want to watch it. Yeah, I think this one's gone away. Um, well, start a whole thread about how testing has actually probably got worse in time, but let's not go there. Um, Next one. You can't see what's happening with a modern cloud. You don't know what's running. This is an interesting one. I mean, this is really pointing back to monitoring and observability.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a huge one, I think.
The tools have got far better now in the last 3 or 4 years.
I think it's probably not so much as a myth. Like, I mean, this one is probably at the time, I kind of felt like with the serverless stuff, in time it wasn't exactly you weren't limited, but you certainly had to navigate it.
Yeah.
So but now like we've even in recent years, Dave, we've been partnering with the cloud providers and we've been trying to preach the sort of open telemetry agenda and just making sure that these things can propagate through those managed services. And I think they are sort of taking those things. And I think the industry is now starting to rally around open standards like W3C, the trace context and open telemetry. So I feel like there's way more options now than there was maybe even a few years ago in
I
terms of how to approach it.
Yeah. I think
I think that's the game changer, the open telemetry and the standards. Well, like years ago, I think when we wrote this, it was very much vendor based.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're using Lambda, you're waiting on AWS
Yeah.
to give your observability coverage and like, um,
Yeah, X-ray and
Yeah, I think when we wrote this around that time, it was hard to get end-to-end observability of a complete transactional flow through,
distributed trace.
yeah, all the way
Yeah,
through. There was lots of hardship and bespoke custom solutions for passing the context and the correlation sort of identifiers through from your Dynamo to your API gateway to your Lambda to your Event Bridge to it was harder than it needed to be to
yeah,
propagate the overall observability
yeah.
traces.
What we love there now is we can take the native telemetry, we can take the telemetry from our applications, we can route them through collectors, we can then set them to these backend providers. So there are strategies and architectures for dealing with this at an enterprise level, because I think this was really more of an enterprise level concern, right?
Yeah.
How do I trace something across multiple disparate distributed systems? So this was
I,
a significant one.
so I'd say this has probably gone away. Are we happy enough for that? I think
I think
that's
it has
probably
gone
fair.
on. I think
Yeah.
your architecture diagram has a lot more things in it and a lot more moving parts that you need to make sure you are aware of and observing. But that's just the
Yeah.
nature of decomposing a big monolithic thing into more smaller subcomponents and modules.
And it was unless like I mean any service architecture is a distributed architecture and distributed architectures are always harder to monitor. Like that's always been the way.
Mm.
Cool. All right, that's gone away. Nick Smith. Serverless/Kubernetes is not the next big thing. It's technology X brackets AI. I didn't write that, but I read a report that backs this up. Besides, our skill set is better matched to technology X. So it's really
Yeah, I think it's again looking at the landscape and looking at the long term view of this stuff, right? Um,
hmm.
and it's back to that clarity of purpose and what are you actually trying to achieve with your technology solutions?
Yeah, so it's just the whole Ruby on Rails
Yeah.
versus serverless or a cloud native or a modern app.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think some of this is some of the inertia to change, right? If you are brought up in a more traditional sort of ecosystem, you're maybe traditional on-premises sort of server stack, or you're containerized and Docker and all in those days, and then the rise of maybe containerization and Kubernetes and that sort of container orchestration sort of capabilities.
hmm
You might go, oh, we don't know this serverless stuff. We're not gonna embrace it, right?
Well,
yeah,
I actually think this is probably still pretty relevant because even today, like I mean, it's not really the technology, it's the fundamentals that are more important. You know, how you design your system and how you think about things. And the technology just well, if you pick the right technology, it makes it easier. So there are plenty of architects, I'm sure today, who are sitting going, I'm not touching that AI agentic Gen AI stuff
Yeah.
because I don't know what's happening. You know, I'm sure there's plenty of people sitting going, and then there's a lot of people jumping on it. So it's the same type of thing. But if you haven't got your fundamentals right, it doesn't actually matter if you pick up the latest
Yeah.
AI agentic stuff. It's going to be a mess anyway.
yeah. I think it all ties back to again the value, the focus on the value. Like, I mean, if you speak to us three, we're not. We had argued we're not. We don't want to be experts in serverless or experts
No.
in this stuff. We just want to be experts in actually achieving business outcomes and building products that actually work for people or serve, whatever that is. It isn't, I'm not going to turn around and go, yeah, I'm a serverless expert, or you hear people say I'm a Kubernetes developer or I'm a React developer. I mean, do you work on Kubernetes? Do you work on React? Or are you actually working for a company that's trying to, achieve outcomes?
Yeah.
So so I think it's to that. really, you know, and
Yeah,
and being awake to that.
But
you
it's
could
also,
argue you should have expertise in like say systems thinking
yeah,
and
Yes.
maybe even like business value or product thinking. If you can figure out those two, then you just make the tech work.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's also always being in a growth mindset and learning about what's emerging, and you're trying to make sure that it fits into your mental model of how things should operate, right? So it's, as the AI stuff emerges, as new agentic flows emerge, as new sort of capabilities emerge from, you need to be aware of them and understand how they fit into your organization, and what the
Hmm.
potential pros and cons of those things are. So
Mm.
you got to, like in this industry, you got to be continuously learning and being aware of what's coming.
And then
Yeah.
even with, to your point, Dave, there's probably a podcast in this in itself, but with the emergence of AI, how relevant is this sort of thing going forward? So if you aren't focused on the value, you're focused on what you're trying to accomplish, you know,
Yeah.
it's this is becoming more and more commodity, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you could argue that the people who are doing AI really well are in the agents, or people who are good systems thinker. You could be a good systems thinker, but you're not a coder.
Mm.
You can just break things down in a systemic way. Um, a lot of people who are doing interesting things with agents are not programmers.
Yep.
Mm.
So interesting. You're right, that's a whole different conversation. This
Yeah.
next one's interesting. So that I'd say that do I think that myth has stayed or gone away or got worse? I
I think
think
it's
that's
things
probably
I think it's
stayed.
just continuously learning and improving. I think
Yeah.
it's still relevant.
Cool. This next one's interesting. We don't want to be locked into that cloud provider. If we use their services, we can never change providers. This is the whole multi-cloud or
Yeah.
thing. I mean, I think after we put this in, I know Gregor Hulp had this in the talk. He did maybe 3 years ago. He did a really good talk on that.
Yeah.
Um,
This is a good one. I don't know, maybe I'm encountering this one less. Um, but But for me, if you again, this goes back to fundamentals and first principles. And if you design your systems in the right way, you should be able to react to whatever circumstances
Yeah.
put before you. You know what I mean? So like we talk about like distributed systems, microservices, domain-driven design, bounded context, building things in a small composable fashion. So you should almost make it that, if you're doing your architecture right, this becomes less of a factor, and if you wanted to go whatever approach you wanted, you should be able to support that, right?
yeah,
But
you
I think
could argue service-based, being service-based,
yeah, I think
you
that
know.
Yeah,
some of the points here were around, don't build abstraction layers that then you have to
yeah,
manage and support and patch and maintain and keep parity with whatever's changing underneath it. The pace and the investments and the amount of people that the cloud providers have working on all those different their services, you'd be
yeah,
crazy not to take advantage of them. So a lot of this was around making your cloud provider your platform team and
Mm,
benefiting across all the different services and all the different capabilities they have as much as possible. You want as thin an abstraction as possible on that, so that whenever they release their new service, feature, capability, whatever,
you
you're
get all the
you're
benefit.
getting it automatically, right? So then you'd want to, like, especially in the serverless sort of world, right? A new vulnerability comes out, AWS or Google or whatever patch that underlying thing, and the next time your function gets invoked, you're automatically taking advantage of that new security patch and feature, right?
Mm,
If you had your multiple layers of abstraction to give you that flexibility for some future scenario that may never happen, you're going to spend a whole lot of weekends and late nights trying to patch that vulnerability in your thing that you've custom built. So
yeah,
mm.
it's the big one. You need to be very wary of but we'll be flexible in the future. It'll give us options in the future.
yeah,
I do think it's probably a thing that is, I don't know if it's people understand how important it is having a good cloud strategy. Um, I wonder is that kind of going away a wee bit, but I think you still need to have somebody sensible figuring out your organization's cloud strategy.
that's a good. I mean, that again, that's probably another podcast in itself, right? Um, our
I don't know. I
conversation
don't think
about
this one's going away, or I think it's going away. I think there's less concern about getting locked in. Um,
Yeah, I don't hear it quite so often anymore.
no, but you still hear a crazy story. So maybe that's slightly adjusting. This next one's kind of related. We are different. We'll create custom standards to keep quality high. I always thought this one was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of there's a tie back to something what you were saying in the last one, Mark. Like we'll probably try and solve for things or encapsulate or abstract things away in a way that we really don't need to. Yeah,
Are you in a truly unique, never seen before, never thought about before scenario? If you are, then yeah, go ahead, create your own standards. But for 99.9% of teams working in the cloud, there are good, hardened, reviewed, and approved, and iterated on by thousands of
yeah,
people over many,
yeah.
many years, capabilities and standards that you can leverage.
Well, I think Adrian Cockcroft kind of does a nice one on this. I think there's a PowerPoint or a talk he was doing where he describes it like serverless is a highly opinionated.
Yep.
There's lots of kind of constraints, but they're almost enabling constraints. You have tons of options in terms of how you wire things together, but it's an opinionated thing.
Yep.
And it is built on all that well architected. This goes back to well architected. So if you feel like you can outdo that, good luck. But
and well architected is a good point in case, right? That's a really good standard, and all the cloud providers have their own version of well architected. Google has theirs, AWS has theirs, and Microsoft has theirs. But it's just overall many years really good guidance and advice on security, operational excellence, reliability, performance, cost optimization, sustainability. You'd be crazy to try to create your own custom version of that. It's complete undifferentiated heavy lifting for you and your org, right? You may as well just benefit from it and apply it appropriately.
Well, even look at even like what we're playing about with we're all looking at all the agentic stuff, and like and when you're using an agent to maybe help with your SDLC, you want to write you want to give it a spec. So this is my context. This is my opinion, and I'm what we've been playing with, what people in general are playing with is, can I get all the well architected best practices and put that in a markdown file and say, here, when you're building this little app, take that into consideration. You're getting that for nothing. Like that's what it's for, And I know AWS will have that in their Kuru application.
And I think in the AI agentic era, all of those best practices, the PDFs, the videos, the content, the workshops, the talks we've done as well on YouTube, that's all been trained into the models for many years. So whenever you ask an agent to help me create a well-architected solution, it knows exactly what that means.
Yep.
Scary times.
It's not Mickey up. So
yep.
I'd hope that's going away. That custom standard thing we're getting. Yeah. I'd hope that's going away. It was always stupid anyway. Okay. Next one, serverless / autoscale is more expensive. There's no control over costs. Well, maybe people thought it was expensive until they started getting their token bill from their AI workloads. It's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a fair one. I mean, again, I think what do you call them at serverless days? There was a good talk on this last year, where teams are starting to adapt. So they were talking about like this. Like there's patterns emerging. So when you're running at low volume or low throughput, or you may kind of go at one kind of.
Oh, was it Jeremy Daly? Was it
Jeremy Daly? It was Jeremy Daly's talk. It was, and so you can cater for that. You know what I mean? So you can kind of flip depending on that. So like you might be running non-prod in a certain configuration, but when you go to prod, you want to go to the next. So again, there's even that's matured an awful lot in the last sort of year or two, right? But again, in order for that to really kick in, you really need to be getting hammered.
For serverless to be expensive, you need to be doing something fantastically stupid.
Or fantastically popular that's just getting,
And it's back to that, knowing your workload patterns and knowing what your usage patterns are and having good telemetry and observability on that. And then you can then make a well-informed choice whether you want to use something else like a container for a particular part of your stack that may give you some benefit or some cost optimization. But it's way down the line of after you've done you've optimized for a lot of other things.
It's a complex formula. Remember, you all the time used to talk about TCO. So how long would it take you to get to the point where you can develop the low cost kind of optimized solution versus doing something up and as you say, kind of learning and kind of moving with that over time? It's
a good one. Yeah,
it's a depends conversation.
I think this is going away. Right, let's go on next.
I've seen lots of people not thinking about the overall cost of moving off of serverless to something else. It's like, okay, well, you want to move to container. Well, now you own that. You have to patch it and secure it and harden it and
100%.
all the networking that goes along with it,
TCO.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
big one. Right, a couple more ways to get through. That's a good one. The engineers won't do what I tell them to, the VP of engineering. I think that's still there. Um,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
you have to let the engineers do what the engineers need to do.
yeah,
Like, I
Yeah.
mean, good engineers are empowered and they have agency. If you hire the right people, you can't tell them what to do.
yeah. You don't hire really smart people and then dictate what they should work on. They should create an environment where they work on the right things, but they should have agency to do the right thing.
But I
And
find it,
maybe you are an exceptional VP of engineering, but many VPs of engineering haven't written a line of code in at least the last 10 years. So,
yeah. And I find in most, in this one, my experience tends to be when this does happen, it's, they have the team, there hasn't been any time or space for the team to train or, invest in the technology, or they're still trying to approach things in traditional ways and they're really not
yeah,
embracing modern cloud, modern apps.
Yeah.
yeah, I think this is still there for sure. Don't slow
100%.
them down. Our engineers, our engineers are disconnected from the business. VP of engineering again.
Yeah.
Um,
I still think it's there. I mean, if you're getting into
yeah,
organizations, you're new to this is definitely going to be a significant one, and it's
And maybe it's the nature of the organizations we work on, but I'm seeing a lot more clarity of purpose and a lot more direct linkage between what the organizational sort of vision, mission, North Star is and what the teams are working on. But maybe that's just the nature of how we operate these days,
we
and
like
that's
to
the way
think
we
we
think.
insist on all that. We try and help all
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
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 This is the whole John Cutler, the whole classic, how close you are, and so
I'd like to think companies are waking up to that. I mean, with all the stuff that we've been through, the whole agile thing, all the stuff the team topologies are doing about stream aligned versus platform aligned and understand like what your team is for. That's important. All
Yeah,
right.
you got that fast flow of value to production.
Yeah.
Um, makes
Okay, let's fly on
makes
here.
sure that everyone knows what they're doing and why they're doing it for the business.
All right. This technology worked a charm for me in my last role. Let's use it instead. Yeah, we can't just that's like siloed thinking.
yeah,
I do think that's still there.
Yeah.
it is still there. It is still there. I mean, we've had this one where okay, I like serverless, but maybe I like serverless with Java, or I like serverless with Python, or I like serverless with you do have to kind of navigate that
God, I'm looking all the engineering management myths are still there. Next one is we only work on the cool stuff.
stuff. Yeah,
I
That's
only work
definitely
on
still
AI.
there.
I only work on AI stuff. Could be put in there, right?
Yeah, we only do agentic.
yeah, or
That's
incubators,
it.
or
That's definitely still there. Yeah, the innovation myth. Uh,
yeah.
okay. Right. Last couple. Organizational myths. Um, we are under capacity.
Um,
Capacity is an interesting one.
where most orgs are always under capacity, right? So again, like most successful, like even when we talk about like you remember the whole sort of migration, modernization, how do you approach things? You normally take a piece at a time, right? So again,
Yeah.
there's never any reason not to have capacity to kind of keep continuing to move forward.
Well, I
But
think here you always don't there's always more work than people, but there's probably another thing here about have you leveled up your teams enough so they can really perform?
yeah,
Well,
or
how have you leveled up your teams enough, but also have you broken down the work properly and thought about what is actually the most important thing you should do next?
Yeah.
And some of that is, that's on the leadership to make sure that you're actually focusing on things that matter and make an impact.
mm,
So I think this one's still there.
Yeah.
Next one's interesting. Security is blocking serverless. We're trying to do serverless, but security won't let us. I think this is kind of going away.
Yeah, it's gone away. I think there's been enough of the security benefits of serverless out there in the ecosystem now that it really,
Yeah, it's
it
kind of
really
going
cut.
mainstream, and I
Yes.
think security
you,
people will
you,
appreciate the isolation.
yeah, you still do encounter it though. I do think. What do you call that? Remember we tried to. There was those things where you want to monitor what's getting in and out of the runtime. Uh,
Oh yeah.
The dynamic tracing or
uh,
dynamic uh, the the
It wasn't the
Uh,
tracing, but I think then like the cloud provider then came back and like it's easy. You can do it natively. I think maybe a year or two back they didn't really have it. You couldn't really monitor, inspect the traffic in and out.
right.
Do you know what I mean? And so we've it's kind of been solved, but you still do have to. They always kind of probe it and take interest in it, and
Mm,
then and then auditing is another one in there.
yeah,
But yeah,
very good.
It's been solved.
Speaking of that, yeah. Another one, I think this one's going away. Our financial model doesn't support OPEX, CFO. I think that one's going away.
Yeah.
Where people are used to flexing cloud bills.
Yeah,
Um,
that's I think the finance department is well aware of the elastic nature of cloud bills now, I think.
yeah, I think that's going away. Next one is it's almost like the sunk cost. We spent 2 years building that. Was it a waste of money? You just built something and then AWS bring it out. I always thought that was a positive thing. It means you're ahead of the game, and then you can decide if you want to move to the AWS thing or stay in your own thing. But you probably realize that eventually you'll move,
yeah,
But it
Uh,
means you're ahead of the game.
yeah, and you got to keep that code as liability mindset with this as well. You take all the lessons, take all the learnings, take all the things that the team did with it. But if a new
Yeah.
capability comes out that's a commodity that a cloud provider provides for you, move to it.
Even
yeah,
better, meet the cloud provider and
Yep.
say, well, I like what you've built, but you missed these two things. Can you add them, please?
yeah. Partner.
Um, the last one, a consultancy will come in, engage with us for 12 weeks and set the direction.
Um,
I don't
Personally,
think
haven't
that's,
experienced this in a while, but
Yeah,
used to think.
I hope that's going away. I
yeah,
think consultants are changing a lot.
yeah.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
I hope so.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
think
think they are.
what we have in there is about you should own your technology and business strategy. I don't think you should outsource that to consultants. You should understand your ecosystem, understand your landscape, and set strategy appropriately. And yes, you might not be as slick or as perfected as some of the consultants, but the only way to get good at this stuff is to actually do it. So
Yeah.
don't outsource your strategy.
Never.
Very good. There's a nice book, BizTech Evolution, a guy called Ivan Kernick, which is good. Talks about how consultancy should evolve, about keeping skin in the game. It's worth a read. But that's the crack. I think we're not too bad. I don't think too many of them have been out of date.
No, they're good. They're still definitely make you think. So you have to think about them for your org, but there's still some elements
Yeah.
of them are still there and still resonant.
It's probably mostly disappointing that a lot of the engineering management ones are still looming large. It haven't changed at all. But
Evergreens, right?
let's not go there. All right, well
No.
that's the crack. Give us a follow or like on YouTube channel or on the LinkedIn page. And back next week for chapter 14.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, everyone.